George Russell might be one of the most unlucky top-tier drivers Formula One has seen in recent years. Not because he's lacking speed or results or even consistency. In fact, he's delivered all three. The real problem? Politics, timing, and maybe, just maybe, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. When Russell made the jump from Williams to Mercedes, it felt like a dream finally realized. Years of dragging a backmarker car to Q3S and scoring points it had no business scoring were finally rewarded. He was supposed to be the heir to Hamilton, the next big thing, the calm, sharp, consistent Brit who would lead Mercedes into its next era. And to be fair, he's done just about everything right. A Grand Prix win in Canada, multiple podiums, always within striking range of Verstappen in the driver's standings. But here's the twist. Doing everything right doesn't mean your seat is safe, especially when Max Verstappen is suddenly in the picture. Rumors started swirling after a quiet little meeting in Sardinia between Toto Wolff and Max, and it wasn't some casual chat either. Sources close to both camps suggest real discussions took place, ones that could reshape the entire F1 grid. Because if Max becomes available, Mercedes will pounce, no matter how loyal they are to Russell, no matter how much he's done. That's the game. It's cold, it's brutal, and right now, George Russell is smack in the middle of it. This is where it gets even messier. Russell is managed by Mercedes. That means the same people who are supposed to guide his career are also the ones entertaining a deal that could shove him out the door. And Russell knows it. He's not delusional. When asked about the rumors, he responded with the class and diplomacy you'd expect from him, saying he doesn't take it personally and he's open to teaming up with anyone. But let's be real, no driver is happy when their team's out there talking to someone else, especially when that someone else is Verstappen. Now here's where the story takes a sharp turn. If Mercedes does let Russell go, or even makes him feel unwanted, where does he go? Red Bull? That sounds like a decent option at first glance, but not when you look closely. The Milton Keynes-based team is in chaos. It's not just Christian Horner being removed, we're talking about a complete reshuffling. Newey's gone, Jonathan Wheatley's out, Corrin also gone. And with Verstappen likely on his way out too, Red Bull's once unstoppable empire is suddenly starting to look shaky. Not a great time to hop on board. But that might actually work in Russell's favor, because if Red Bull is planning a rebuild, they're going to need someone who's steady, proven, and capable of leading that rebuild. Russell ticks every single box. He may not be the flashiest guy on the grid, but he's calculated, mentally strong, and more experienced than people give him credit for. The problem? Red Bull's new leadership, particularly Laurent Mekies, might be thinking long-term, promoting from within. Young names like Arvid Lindblad and Isaac Hadjar are being thrown around, and if they choose to go full future mode, there might not be a seat left for George. Still, there's another door that could open, and this one might be an even better fit. Aston Martin. Russell has history with Honda through Mercedes. He's worked with Andy Cowell before, and Aston is building something serious. They've got the money, the engineers, and the ambition. And with Fernando Alonso likely wrapping up his career soon, there's a real shot for Russell to walk in and become the team leader. The only roadblock? Lawrence Stroll. Because let's face it, unless Lance Stroll steps aside, nothing's moving in that garage. Lawrence Stroll has made it clear. Aston Martin is his empire, and his son is a permanent fixture in the team. Lance might not be a future champion, but his seat isn't just about talent. It's about bloodlines, family pride, and a billionaire's unshakable belief that his son belongs in Formula One. That complicates everything. Because while Alonso's retirement could open one door, Lance's immovable status keeps the other one bolted shut. And yet, behind the scenes, conversations are already happening. Russell's management is keeping an eye on Silverstone. They know how closely George has worked with several names now stationed at Aston Martin. They know there's mutual respect. Most importantly, they know Aston is about to enter a whole new era, powered by Honda, guided by Newey, and shaped by some of the sharpest minds in the paddock. It's not just a team anymore, it's a proper project. And Russell might just be the piece that completes the puzzle. There's a buzz growing that Fernando Alonso, despite having a contract for 2026, might step aside a bit earlier than expected if the right opportunity presents itself. He's no stranger to sacrifice when the long-term play is worth it, especially when that sacrifice would benefit Aston's ambitions. The idea of a seasoned veteran giving way to a younger, hungry, race-winning Brit to lead the charge into a new regulation era, that's not far-fetched. Not when the whole organization is betting big on the future. But let's not pretend that Russell's only option lies with Aston or Red Bull. The driver market heading into 2026 is the wildest we've seen in a decade. New regulations, new engines, new lineups, and a massive power shift is already happening. McLaren has locked in their duo, Ferrari's playing the long game with Leclerc and Hamilton, Alpine is a mess, Haas is rebuilding, Audi is making moves, and Mercedes might just be the one triggering the entire domino effect. Toto Wolff has always spoken highly of Russell. Publicly, he's praised his professionalism, his consistency, his data-driven approach. But actions speak louder than press quotes. Entertaining talks with Verstappen, after everything George has given to the team, sends a message loud and clear. Russell is not untouchable, and that's all a driver really needs to hear to start making his own moves. What makes this entire situation even more layered is Antonelli, the teenage prodigy, the one Mercedes has been grooming like he's the chosen one. The Italian has already secured a contract for 2026, while Russell hasn't. And that's no accident. Mercedes is clearly planning for the long term, and they seem to be betting big on Kimi. He's fast, composed, and already turning heads in Formula 2. The writing's on the wall. Mercedes is preparing for a future that doesn't necessarily include George. That said, if Russell does walk away, it might just turn out to be the best thing for his career. He's not a sidekick. He's not a placeholder. He's a driver who's outperformed expectations at every stage of his journey. If he finds the right team, one that believes in him, builds around him, and gives him the machinery to fight, he could easily be a title contender. The only thing standing in his way is timing, and unfortunately, that's never been kind to him. Mercedes owes a lot more to George Russell than they might be willing to admit. Since the start of the ground effect era, he's been responsible for the majority of their high points, 4 of the team's 6 wins, 6 of the 7 pole positions, and those weren't flukes. He's outqualified Hamilton more often than not, outscored him on several weekends, even carried the team on his back during stretches when their car looked like a midfield runner. That kind of contribution doesn't come from a second-tier driver. It comes from someone you built around. And yet, there's this unspoken feeling that Russell is still seen as expendable, like he's always being kept warm for someone else. First it was Lewis, now it's Max. Maybe next it'll be Antonelli. Whatever the case, George is starting to see through the PR smiles and polite contract talks. When a team starts planning your replacement before you've even left, that's your cue to pack your bags and start looking elsewhere. There's also the mental toll to consider. Racing at the highest level already demands everything from a driver: focus, fitness, strategy, instinct. But doing all that while constantly looking over your shoulder, that's a different kind of pressure. It eats away at your motivation. You start to question why you're pushing so hard if your best isn't even good enough to be recognized. And that's exactly what Russell's dealing with right now. If Mercedes truly wanted to keep him long term, they would have already locked him in. Instead, they're dangling the possibility of Verstappen in front of him, knowing full well what that implies. It's disrespectful, plain and simple. Especially when Russell has remained loyal, handled himself with class, and never caused drama. Something Mercedes usually prides itself on. On the flip side, Red Bull isn't the guaranteed fairy tale either. Without Max and Horner, it's a very different place. And with all the internal shakeups, the team that dominated the last few seasons may not even resemble its old self anymore. The car is still fast, but that's only because Verstappen has been able to drive around its issues. Without him, they're vulnerable, maybe even beatable. And if Russell were to join them now, he'd be walking into a team in transition, not a finished product. That's why Aston Martin stands out so much. If Alonso does step back and the Stroll situation somehow resolves itself, George could finally find what he's never had: a team that's building around him, not despite him. With Honda's engines, Newey's car design, and Russell's experience, that trio could be a legitimate title threat. And let's not forget, Aston isn't looking for short-term wins. They're thinking about legacy, dominance, and becoming the next Mercedes or Red Bull. Russell fits that vision perfectly. But even if none of these options materialize right away, George has one last card to play: performance. If he keeps outracing his teammates, if he keeps dragging the car onto podiums and into wins, he forces everyone to take notice. The sport is cruel, yes, but it still respects results. And Russell's got them. He just needs more. Maybe that's the best revenge of all. Not shouting in the media, not storming out, just letting his driving do the talking. Because whether he ends up at Red Bull, Aston Martin, or stays right where he is, one thing's for sure: George Russell is not done. Not by a long shot, and when the dust settles after this silly season madness, don't be surprised if he's the one holding all the cards.